everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys one of my favorite videos to film every year. This is the mid-year book freakout tag for 2022. I have done this video every year since I believe 2019. If you want to check out those videos, definitely check out my book tags playlist that is on my channel. So I have 13 questions here. I'm going to list all of them down in the description if you want to do this tag video yourself, and I'm going to try my best to find who the original creator of this tag is, and then I'll link their original video down in the description as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. I am very excited to talk about my answers for these questions. First question is best book that you have read so far in 2022, and I have to say that this was actually the easiest question for me because hands down, no doubt, that is Manacled by Senlin Yu. This is a Harry Potter fanfiction, specifically a Draco and Hermione dark fantasy romance fanfiction. This is a massive story. It's well over 1,000 pages, quite the commitment. Like I said, very dark. Definitely look up the content warnings yourself. But I read this all the way back in the beginning of January, and I was so blown away by this story because I do feel like there's a stigma with fan fiction. People, and I'm including myself in this, people assume that fan fiction isn't as good as published works. But I have to say the writing of this blew me away. The story is incredible. It will wreck you. It will gut you. But it is worth every word and worth every page. I would highly recommend that you check out my mid-January reading wrap-up where I did like a 10-minute review of this fan fiction. I will link that up in the cards above, and then I will also link my top 5 books of January video where I also discussed this fan fiction at length because I don't want to spend too much time in this video talking about it, but just know that it's incredible. I have already accepted that I will most likely not read anything else this year that will top this. It's just that good. So with that being said, we have best sequel that you have read so far this year. And this did take a little thinking on my part because I haven't read a lot of series this year that are not companion romance series. So I haven't read a lot of series that like have an overarching story, but I have read this duet by Jana Darling that is absolutely chef's kiss amazing. That is the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. And so the sequel, or the second book in this duet, is When Villains Rise. And so what was crazy to me was that I loved this book, book 2, even more than book 1, and I absolutely adored book 1. But basically this is a mafia romance duet. I will be bringing up this duet later on in the video, but basically this is about Elena, who is a lawyer, and Dante, who is a mafioso. And this definitely has like the grumpy, icy heroine and more charming, maybe kind of sunshiny hero dynamic going on. And I had never read anything by Jana Darling before this. Thank God that I read this for my reading vlog where I read some of Tori's absolute favorite books, because otherwise I don't know when I would have gotten to a Jana Darling book. But I'm so glad that I read this duet. And like I said, book 2 was somehow even better than book 1. Easily one of my favorite romances that I've read this year, and just one of my favorite romance series that I've ever read. Like, this is fantastic. Like I said, I will be bringing up this duet later on in this video because that's how much I loved it. So new release that you want to read. I have 2 that I am so freaking excited about. The first one is My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. This is her newest release. This is an indie published book. It says an all-new spicy murder mystery. The basic premise centers around a brash bounty hunter and an energetic elementary school teacher, the murder-solving team no one asked for, but thanks to these pesky attempts on my life, we're stuck together come hell or high tide. I really love this cover. I love Tessa Bailey so much. A lot of the books that I've read by her, I have given 5 stars. I will be shocked if I don't give this 5 stars. The premise sounds amazing. It sounds like the perfect vacation summary read, and yeah, it's the vibe that I'm looking for sure. And then the other new release that I cannot wait to get to is Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliet Cross. This is book 4 in her Stay a Spell series. This is a paranormal romance series that centers around the Savoy sisters. They are witches that live in New Orleans. I am from the New Orleans area and I live here, and this is one of my top favorite paranormal romance series, or just my top favorite romance series ever in general. And I'm so excited because this is Livy and Gareth's story, and Gareth is a Grimm, which is a type of paranormal creature in this world that we don't really know much about. They're very mysterious, and I read a novella about this couple in the Walking in a Witchy Wonderland bind-up that Juliet Cross released, and I was already obsessed with them in that novella, so I know that this is going to be a home run. The only reason why I haven't read this yet is because I am waiting for the audiobook to come out, because the audiobooks for this series, guys, are some of my top favorite romance audiobooks ever. So I am willing to wait for the audiobook because they're just that amazing. Number 4 is most anticipated release for the rest of 2022. I have 2 releases that I am the most excited for. The first one is Heat Wave by TJ Klune. This is the 3rd and final book in his The Extraordinary series, which is one of my favorite YA series ever at this point. It's basically about gay superheroes and fan fiction. What more could you want? Books 1 and 2 are some of my favorite books ever. And so I am just the most excited for this book to come out. Yes. And then the other release that I am super excited for is Ruby Fever. This is coming out August 23rd. This is the 6th and I think final book in their Hidden Legacy series. This is Alona Andrews. They are a husband and wife writing duo. Now, you could think of this either as book 6 or as book 3 in the second trilogy of this series, because basically the first trilogy centers around Nevada and Connor, and then this second trilogy centers around Catalina and Alessandro. And I have been holding out on reading books 1 and 2 in this trilogy because I've been waiting for this book to come out so that I could just binge them all at once. So I'm definitely gonna reread books 1 through 3 and then dive in to the second trilogy once Ruby Fever comes out. This cover is everything, and I already know that I'm obsessed with Alessandro and Catalina because they were featured a bit in the first trilogy of the series, and like, this is definitely the best urban fantasy romance series that I've ever read. Granted, I haven't read that many, but I am just obsessed with Alona Andrews, their writing, the stories that they tell, like the magic system, like everything is just exquisite. Question number 5, unfortunately, is a negative question. This is biggest disappointment. This did take a bit of thinking and brainstorming on my part because I have to say, more often than not, I have really enjoyed the books that I've been reading this year, but a disappointment for me was When the Duke Was Wicked by Lorraine Heath. This is book 1, and I believe it's the Scandalous Gentleman of St. James series. And there's a couple reasons why I was so disappointed in this book, because I've read quite a few books by Lorraine Heath and I've enjoyed all of them. I've given them all at least 4 stars, and I've given a few of them 5 stars. So I went into this just assuming I was gonna have a good time and really enjoy it. I like that she writes like darker historical romances. She usually has like bonkers plots, plot twists, things like that, but also great romances. But with this one, our hero Lovingdon, he's a duke, of course, he was just so emotionally unavailable and stunted that I just couldn't root for him. And the heroine was fine. She wasn't like a very notable character for me. So I just didn't care about either the hero or the heroine. And what was so weird about this book is that, and I swear I was paying attention, the hero never reveals his first name to the heroine or to anyone else. And what's really kind of funny and ridiculous about that is that when the hero and heroine were having sexy times, she had no choice but to call out his title because she didn't know his first name, which is really freaking weird, because if you're in a relationship with someone or married to someone, like you would know their first name and you would call them by their first name. Like there's always that moment in a historical romance where if the hero has a title, he will tell the heroine, no, call me by my first name, because we know each other that well, right? So yeah, that was just like a really weird thing about that book. So unfortunately I gave this one like 2.5 stars. Very sad that I didn't love this one because I know so many people that have given this book 5 stars. So question 6 is biggest surprise. Now for this question, I could say Manacled by Senlin Yu, because that was my very first full-length fan fiction. Like I said earlier in the video, I did not know what to expect from a full-length fan fiction. I had no idea how good and how amazing fan fictions could be, but instead I decided to go with a different book for this answer, and that's going to be Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. This is technically book 2 in her Game Changer series, which is an hockey romance series, but I didn't read book 1. You definitely don't need to. You can read these books as standalones, and this one was a surprise to me because I kind of picked this up on a whim. This is a book that I've kind of had on my radar for quite a few years just because I've seen, like, anybody I've seen talk about this book has had nothing but amazing things to say about it and has given it 5 stars and has said that it's like one of their favorite romances or one of their favorite sports romances in general or whatever. So I knew that there was a lot of hype behind this book. Not necessarily that like a ton of people have read it, but like I said, just that like everybody who has read it has loved it. And so then in, what was it, last month or maybe April or something, I just kind of picked it up on a whim because I was in the mood for something different. I don't read a lot of sports romances. So I just thought this was gonna be a good time. And oh my God, Shane and Ilya, the 2 main characters of this book, oh my God, they like punched me in the gut. I was not prepared for how emotionally invested I became in this couple. Like, this romance truly has everything you could want from a steamy sports romance. It's that well done. The writing is incredible in my opinion. There is also a sequel that Rachel Reed recently came out with called The Long Game, which I also read and absolutely loved as well. You don't have to read the other books in this series to enjoy Shane and Ilya's story, because I haven't and I didn't miss anything. But yeah, this book and their story totally blew me away, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Next up, we have favorite new or new to you author. So for this question, I decided to go with Miss Sophie Lark. I'm holding up Broken Vow, which is book 5 in her Brutal Birthright series, which I believe this is her first series that she published. So I did read Brutal Prince, which is book 1 in this series, back in November of last year, but I liked that one. I didn't love it. I think I gave it 4 stars. But then starting earlier this year is when I read Stolen Heir, and then up to book 5. There are 6 books in this series total, so I only have 1 more book to go in this series, but I have truly enjoyed every book that I have read so far in this series. Stolen Heir and this one, Broken Vow, are my top 2 favorites of the series, but I also really loved Bloody Heart. Savage Lover wasn't my favorite, but there were still things that I loved about that romance as well. There is something about Sophie Lark's writing that I can't get enough of. It is so addictive, so compulsively readable, and I think that she does a fantastic job for the most part of balancing her romances with action scenes. You know, because this is a mafia romance series, there's gonna be action scenes, suspense elements, things like that, and I just think she does such a good job of balancing everything into just truly amazing stories and really great characters. This one, like I said, is my favorite. This one is Riona, who is like an icy, grumpy heroine, and then Raylan, who is a sunshiny hero. It's everything. I raved about this book in my mid-June wrap-up, which should be going up next week, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I cannot wait to devour everything that Sophie Lark writes. I am finding that she's an author that I kind of savor. I'm not jumping into all of her books yet because I don't want to get to the end of her backlist. Next up, we have newest fictional crush. I have 2 characters that I have to mention. The first one is Dante from the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. This is book 2, When Villains Rise, but I'm holding this one up because this one has Dante on the cover. Dante is a new book husband for me. He is the perfect balance of charming and kind of sunshiny in that he loves to get under Elena's skin, and like I said, she's a more grumpy heroine, but he can be incredibly ruthless and brutal when he needs to be because he is a mafia capo. Also, just the way that Dante treats Elena, our heroine, the way that he talks to her, the way that he loves her, he's everything. He's perfect. He is a mafia hero perfection. I could go on and on about him, but my other fictional crush has to be Draco Malfoy, specifically from the fanfiction Contradictions by Ampersand. This story centers around Draco and Hermione, and they end up starting a dominant submissive relationship. Basically, Hermione is exploring BDSM for the first time, and so she joins this very exclusive sex club, and so she ends up getting matched up with Draco as her dom, and Draco in this is the perfect dom. Perfect. Swoon city. I love him so freaking much. Like, this fanfiction, guys, totally blew me away because like the BDSM representation in this is so well done. You could definitely read this if you're someone who's like trying to dip their toe into BDSM romance, because I feel like this is a really good introduction into what BDSM is and how important consent is and things like that and all the terminology. But then there's also this really interesting fantasy plot having to do with the wizarding world. Like, there's everything that you could want in this, and the Draco in this fanfiction specifically is just like everything that I could ever want. He is just amazing. And then next question is newest favorite character, and that has to be Elena from the Antiheroes in Love duet. Like, clearly I love this duet, right? But Elena is such an iconic main character, iconic heroine. I love her character arc because at the very beginning of this book, you know, she's icy and grumpy. She's also dealing with some pretty serious health issues. I believe she has endometriosis. So throughout, I believe this first book, she gets a pretty serious surgery to help her with her symptoms. But I love her character arc. She is just someone who is so rooted in her beliefs, and then Dante comes into her life and things just completely change for her. And yeah, she's a badass. She's an icon. She's everything. All right, question number 10 is book that made you cry. There's quite a few books that I've read this year that have definitely at least made me tear up, but when we're talking about books that have made me full on cry, the first book that came to my mind is After Dark with a Duke by Julianne Long. This is book 4 in her Palace of Rogues series. So the basic setup is that we have James, our hero, who is a duke. He's in his early 40s, and then we have Mariana, who is 25. She is an opera singer. And because these two men fought a duel over her, she has now been brought low by society, and she is now known as the Harlot of Haywood Street. She has nowhere else to turn to but the Grand Palace on the Thames, which is this boarding house that the whole series is centered on. James is also staying there. Their relationship starts as like a hate to love situation because James just judges the shit out of Mariana. But the way that these two become friends and then eventually become lovers is stunning. And what made me cry is really the grand gestures that James does for Mariana, because he does hurt her towards the end because she's an opera singer. Back then, you didn't marry opera singers, you would have them as mistresses. So towards the end, we see that James is very reluctant to making her his wife. Mariana is very hurt by that, obviously, but then he learns his lesson, and the grand gestures are just stunning and beautiful. The way that he shows Mariana that he truly loves her just got me. Yeah, I couldn't help but cry. And also, I myself am an opera singer, so I related to Mariana a lot in that regard as well. This is just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful historical romance. And then on the flip side of that, book that made you happy, that has to go to The Weight of It All by N.R. Walker. This is a book that was not really on my radar, but I was talking to Desiree from Genki Reader. I will link her YouTube down in the description below. She really loves MM romances and like really kind of like out of the box, like obscure MM romances. So I was just talking to her one day on Instagram, and she recommended N.R. Walker in general, and she said that this is her personal favorite book by N.R. Walker. And this is just the sweetest, funniest, body positive rom-com. This is about Henry, our main character. I believe that's the main character's name. At the very beginning of the book, his long-term boyfriend breaks up with him. And one of the reasons for that is because Henry has gained a lot of weight over the course of their relationship. And so Henry decides to get a personal trainer and to lose weight to get his boyfriend back. And then we have Reed, who is Henry's personal trainer. And oh my God, this friends to lovers romance is just everything you could want from a friends to lovers rom-com. It's everything. I laughed out loud several times. I at least teared up several times. I might have full on cried. Like, this book hit me in my feels, and it's just so well done. So I can't recommend it enough. I feel like not nearly enough people have read this. This is also on Kindle Unlimited if you are interested. Yeah, this was just so good. It made me so giddy and happy. So the next question is the most beautiful book that you either bought or received this year. So I have two books that I want to mention for this question, because these are two books that have a lot of sentimental value to me, but they're also just really pretty books. So the first book I want to bring up for this question is Real by Kennedy Ryan. This is a book that I bought pretty recently when I was in Atlanta with some of my bookish friends. I will link the vlog that I posted about that trip up in the cards above if you are interested. But this book just holds so much sentimental value to me because I bought this when I was meeting these bookish friends that I have for the first time, and that weekend was just like one of my favorite weekends I've ever had. And this book is like the perfect souvenir from that weekend. And also this book means so much to me because it's a signed copy by Kennedy Ryan. There is her signature. And also this is just a very well made book. I'll show you. Each like first page of each chapter has like really pretty art. Like this one has like a director's chair, and some of the chapters have like stage lights like this. Like, it's just a very beautifully made book. I can't wait to read this. But yes, anytime I look at this book, I just feel so happy because I'm remembering that weekend that I had in Atlanta. And then the other book that I want to mention is a gift that I received from my really good bookish friend Samantha from Books with Samantha. That is The Phantom of the Opera. This is a graphic novel, and I did not expect to get this from her. She randomly sent this to me for Valentine's Day, and this is just a stunning graphic novel. There's some of the art there if you're curious. I just need to take some time one night and read through this because it's a graphic novel. It's gonna be a really quick read, but this is a book that, as beautiful as the artwork is, it also just means so much to me because Samantha sent it to me and I wasn't even expecting it. Like, thank you so much, Samantha. I love you so much. So we have one question left. That is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I actually made a video back in December of last year where I talked about 25 books that I want to read in 2022. So any books that I haven't read from that video, those are books that I need to read. And then also I have House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 2 in her Crescent City series, or her House of Earth and Blood series. The only reason why I haven't read this yet is because I desperately need to reread House of Earth and Blood before jumping into this, because this is a very complex adult fantasy series, for me at least, because I don't read a lot of adult fantasy. So for me, this series is very complex. Some people may feel differently, but yeah, because I need to reread that first book, and that first book was 800 pages, this book is 800 pages, you know, I definitely have been putting it off, but I know I'm gonna love this. I know I'm gonna give it 5 stars. Also, this is a stunning cover. It's kind of shiny, but yeah, I am excited about this book. It's just going to be quite the commitment because I have so much reading to do before I can even jump into this, right? So that is going to be it for my mid-year book freakout tag for 2022. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely leave a comment down below if you want to answer some of these questions in a comment, or if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up, anything like that. I always love hearing from you guys in the comments. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!